Hello and welcome to episode 104 of Communicast, the podcast dedicated to enhancing communication skills. I'm your host, Scott D'Amico, president of Communispond. Today I'm joined by Susanne Biro, an executive coach with over 24 years of experience working closely with CEOs and senior leaders at some of the world's largest organizations. In this episode, Susanne shares powerful insights about self-mastery, psychological safety, and how leadership often happens in the nanoseconds between stimulus and response. This is one of those conversations that blends heart and strategy with clear takeaways for anyone looking to grow their impact. Let's dive in. Susanne, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to have a conversation with you.
I am looking forward to it as well. To kick things off, if you could, tell the listeners maybe a little bit about you, your career journey, and the great work that you're doing today.
Oh, thank you. So my name is Susanne Biro. For 24 years, I've been an executive coach. These days, I work mostly with CEOs, C-suite leaders, executive level leaders of very large companies. I got into this work by hiring my own coach. I was an advertising executive, and I just found the process incredibly useful. Personally and professionally, it changed who I believed I was, what I thought was possible, my communication skills, that these, as I've heard your guests say and you say, these are learnable skills. And I think that's a really exciting message. And so then I decided I wanted to actually go and do this work. My background was in psychology and business, and so it was a really natural fit for me to launch into coaching. And so for the last 24 years, I have spent my days listening to the inner thoughts, concerns, frustrations, aspirations of literally thousands of senior level leaders. And it's work I absolutely love. I feel very blessed to do it. People trust me with information that they sometimes have never shared with anyone. So it's an incredible honor to partner with some of the world's best and brightest and to provide them the support, feedback that they're often not getting because they hold very powerful positions, and to help them continue to feel seen, human, and to continue to advance, because very successful people always want to continue to learn, grow, and advance. So that's a little bit about me.
Fascinating. What a great journey. And a couple of things. One, congratulations for truly enjoying what you do. I know it seems somewhat rare these days. I feel the same way. I wake up very excited about the work that I get to do and the impact that I get to have on people and their teams and their organizations. That's always refreshing to get to hear that. And wow, the stories I am sure that you have working with executives at large organizations in that one-on-one capacity, and them really divulging things to you and sharing some of the stories. We won't get into too much of that, but one of the things that you touched on that I think really is critical when it comes to that conversation around leadership is that as you continue to rise up in an organization, people's willingness or comfortability with being honest with you and providing you true, authentic feedback versus what they think you want to hear, that's a big challenge that a lot of leaders struggle with. And it's important as you get into those positions to make sure that you're creating that culture where people do feel comfortable bringing that type of stuff to you.
Yeah, and I think to really have an awareness of what walks into a room with us. There's certain level of formal power, social power, sometimes just our physical stature. I mean, I worked with a president who was a 6'5" German man. I said, "You're terrifying." I mean, and I can say this, my family is German, and so it's a very sort of abrupt language, as some languages are. And so it's like, you're so scary. Like if I didn't know better, I'd be intimidated by you. And so what are some ways that you can manage around that to create psychological safety so that you are getting information, that people do feel like they can share the good, bad, and ugly with you so that you can continue to advance the business in meaningful ways. So that kind of awareness I think is key.
When it comes to communication, awareness on both the sender's part, things that I need to be aware of myself. As you mentioned, I think the phrase was what comes into the room with you, whether it's your physical stature, your reputation, the tone in which you typically speak, all that comes with you. And as a leader, especially a high level leader at a large organization, your words and actions carry an outsized weight when it comes to the people on your team, or maybe a few kind of rungs down below you in the organization. So being aware of that, and then also having the awareness of other people when you communicate, right? We're seeing how they're responding to your messages, physically seeing how they're responding when you speak to them. Are they recoiling? Can you tell? Do they look like they feel insecure or defensive or nervous about approaching you? So having that awareness both ways is critical when it comes to communication, which really leads me to the first thing I wanted to chat with you about today was, when you hear that phrase that somebody is a great communicator or they have really strong communication skills, what's the image that comes to mind for you?
The first thing for me, because I feel like we can be an incredible communicator like Mother Teresa, or we can be an incredible communicator like Tony Robbins. Very different styles. But in all cases, for me, it is someone who knows who they are and shows up true to who they are. They're comfortable in their own skin, and there's a level of presence that they're able to pay attention to you and what's happening out there, and not just your words or the words of the boardroom, but what people are feeling, where the emotional climate is. So there is a level of presence that I think is true of all great communicators. We might say they're great listeners, and that's certainly true, but there's a level at which they pay attention. And in my experience, that comes from being very, very intentional in learning to master ourselves. And it usually includes some sort of practice. And we see this when we look at documentaries or biographies of great leaders, is they meditated for hours, or they had a morning prayer time, or they would journal, or they would go for a run in the middle of the day. Or I think it was, I'm not sure if I'm going to get this right, but I think it was Churchill who would take a nap in the afternoon and swore he could fit 2 days of work into one just by doing that. So there's certain like very, very intentional practices to manage oneself, so that when I go out there, I can actually pay attention to what's being said, what's not being said, how are people feeling, what's most needed from my position of power to advance people in the business. Sometimes that's to do nothing, but sometimes that is to show up because my face and my present matters to other people. I become something more than I am to myself. And so you kind of become famous in some way. And you showing up is a really big deal. And so knowing that, and so, really just having some sort of practice, self-knowledge, and being very, very intentional is how can I serve this person and or this collection of people at this time to advance the something that we're working together on.
So authenticity, presence, and really intentionality around how you manage yourself and how you show up and are preparing yourself for the interactions you need to have. And if I think about those three things, and I think about some of the exceptional leaders I've had throughout my career, they were authentic. You were getting them, whether it was a one-on-one in front of a team, or if you saw them interacting at the highest level of the organization, there might be, very slight variance, right? They might tone it down a smidge when they're presenting to the board, but you could tell that is who they are. They're not trying to be somebody else. For me, if I tried to deliver a speech or a presentation in that Tony Robbins style, it would come off as inauthentic. That's just not me. I'm not that, loud, boisterous, super high energy, over the top type of communicator. So I think authenticity is critical. Being present, whether it is just simply for being able to listen, but also, when you are a leader and you're in a group, people are watching everything you do in addition to what you say. So if I'm in a meeting and I just don't I'm constantly looking at my phone, or I'm only talking to a small group of people and not really mingling and getting feedback or talking or socializing, depending on the type of event, with a wide audience within that group, people are paying attention to that. And same thing with that intentionality, right? If For me, my thing is, you hit on it. I take a walk every single day at lunchtime. I block my calendar. I need to get out to clear my head. That helps me power through the afternoon and all the other things that I have to do. But if you're exhausted, if you're stressed, if your mind's on a million different things, you're not going to be able to listen effectively. Listening is a skill that can be developed, but there's this whole thing around it, around your hygiene around listening. Are you preparing for it, and are you in the right mindset to do it? So absolutely love that.
Well, and then I think what the when we don't manage ourselves well, like go for the walk that you know you need to take, we create all kinds of work for ourselves. I know because I watch myself do it. It's like if I had just taken more time to be intentional before I hit send on that email, I wouldn't have created all this confusion or this bad reaction because I used, my tendency is I'm very type A. And so I will, just say, go do this. And then I have to actually go back into my email and say, hi, how are you? Or, add some sort of connection. And I've learned to do that. Otherwise, I just create a whole bunch of work for myself on the other side. And my true intention hasn't been communicated. And I think, I don't think we realize sometimes how much we matter to other people. How powerful we are. Most of us don't feel powerful, but if we only knew how powerful we are, we would change how people feel about themselves daily. And we can make or break their day. And when we really recognize, wow, I'm kind of a big deal to the people I work with and through, whether that's at home to run a family, or whether that's as a CEO of $1 billion company, I'm kind of a big deal to these people. What I say, how I say it, how I show up, I can't be careless. And
Mm-hmm.
so, we just take the power that we have and go, with power comes responsibility. I need to be intentional and use this well because I am somebody to other people. And again, it's true whether we're a parent at home, you're like your mom and dad, it's kind of a big deal. And I think if all we do is get that, we would be a little bit more thoughtful in how we show up. And then, everything just goes easier for us and for others.
I'm glad you brought that up because I think that's probably something that a lot of leaders struggle with acknowledging because they don't want to, maybe not acknowledging, but maybe articulating out because maybe they don't want to sound arrogant or conceited. But to your point, right? I realize, especially at home, the impact that I have on my kids and just the tone of the household, so to speak. So I am very intentional with my words. I am intentional with my actions, my choices, the things that I say, how that I say them, because I know it's having a big impact. Same thing at work, right? If I'm coming into meetings and constantly distracted, constantly short with people, seem exasperated, stressed out, that people are going to feel that, they're going to absorb that, and it's going to impact how they operate. And one of the past guests was the CEO of a hospital system, and he talked about this where he would intentionally block time in his calendars to make sure he was walking the hospital, interacting with people, and not just doing kind of the drive-by waves, hey, how's it going, but stopping and having conversations with people. And he mentioned, he said, it hit me that sometimes if I'm just walking by and quickly wave hi, or maybe they get a short response from me. He said, that might be the only interaction I have with that person this quarter.
Yeah.
And then that's what they're carrying forward. So I think as a leader, really being aware of that, say, yeah, you know what? I am kind of a big deal, right? Not to sound like reminds me of Will Ferrell from Anchorman with Ron Burgundy, but not to that point, but just understanding you impact these people, you impact their lives, and behaving in a way that acknowledges that is really important.
And we know such great points. We know this because even if we think of if we're on an airline, I don't know about you, but I look to this, stewardesses and stewards to read, are we okay? Like when there's turbulence, what are they doing? Are they if the stewardess starts freaking out, I'm freaking out. So I
Mm-hmm.
keep looking to what degree are they confident. So we know, and in that role, that the people that are running that aircraft are really a big deal, right? But I had my early career was an advertising executive, and I was, it was one of my first jobs out of university. And so I'm sort of low on the totem pole, but the CEO would come back to, I was in sort of in the back of the back, desks, and he would walk by my desk and say, what are you working on? And he would sit for about 5 minutes as I explained the most boring job that I had because I was doing the budget control report for our largest client. And he would just laugh and be interested in me. And there were so many of my colleagues who moved to other agencies because they got better offers. I didn't, simply because I felt so valued there. I'm not sure that was the best for my career, but it was the best for, the CEO to have invested that time, because I stayed so much longer just because I felt seen and valued. And so it's the smallest things like that that need not take any real additional time, but they just do so much work for us because, again, we're interacting with human beings.
It's a concept of slow down to speed up, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes just taking a few extra seconds, a few extra minutes here saves so much time in the future, whether it is a lot of ping pong emails because you weren't very clear in your message, or it's saving you time on recruiting and upskilling new employees and lost productivity because you didn't take those few minutes to sit and to engage with people. So, absolutely. Susanne, as you think of your career and the success that you've had, 20 plus years now working with and coaching executives, if you had to boil it down, it's okay, this is kind of the key communication skill. This is the one thing that I think has really made a big difference in my career to help me have this longevity and success. What would that communication skill be?
I think the key would be to have greater awareness of what plays out inside of you. So it's really self mastery. Something happens, there's a stimulus, and there's a time in between there. It's usually just a nanosecond, but I think that's where the moment of leadership is, because it's our one place to choose. Something happens. How do I choose to respond? Most of us are responding based on all kinds of personal history that we're somewhat aware of and then somewhat not aware of, all the way from childhood through, present day, of things that have impacted us, hurt us, been hard for us, things we work to mitigate against. And so if we can bring greater awareness to what happens within me, something happens, what do I think? What do I feel? And based on those thoughts and feelings, how then am I likely to behave? And what is going to be the impact of that behavior? So that I come to learn more about my natural patterns of response. Like when something happens, do I immediately, go to, oh, great, I always get screwed over, and I have this story, or I always get the short end of the stick, or something happens like, okay, what could be great about this? How am I, how can I most effectively handle this? I think that's the greatest opportunity. I'm just about to release a book called This Could Be Everything, for anyone who wants to make their tomorrow better than today. And in it, I offer this tool that is called the Self-Inquiry Tool, or SIT for short. And it is essentially this framework. What's happening inside of me? How can I gain more insight into that? Something happens. I have thoughts, I have feelings. Based on those thoughts and feelings, I'm going to behave a certain way or take certain actions or not actions. And what is likely to be the impact or the results of that? Then I can start to really know, I don't, something happens, how am I likely to behave? Short and rude, what's the impact of that? Probably not very useful. So what do I want to do instead? Is there a different way that I can think and feel about this that leads to a different behavior that will lead to the result I'm actually wanting and intending? So I think it's an endless journey of learning about ourselves, but it comes to self-awareness. And then eventually what we're working towards is, at least what I'm working towards and with my clients, is self-mastery. I think what we're seeking is the ability to control ourselves. We cannot control the world and what happens out there, and we don't need to. If we learn to control ourselves and know that, okay, whatever happens, I'm going to be able to handle it. Something happens, it's not favorable or not what I wanted, or my initial hit is like, I'm hurt. I usually say to myself, ouch, that hurt. Now I'm mad. Okay, what am I mad about? How do I want to handle this? What's the most effective way? So I would say that learning more about ourselves through things that go exceptionally well or things that frustrate us or people that are challenging for us to work with is the greatest place where we can learn. And then we continue to learn to control ourselves. And I love when I hear from clients or I notice within myself something will happen that years ago would have like really worried me or concerned me or made me nervous. Now is like just not a big deal. I almost don't even notice it. And so I think, there's the payoff for this work. Whatever comes, I know I'm going to be able to handle it in a way that may not be perfect, but in a way that I'm proud of. And I'll handle it well with my values and then the integrity that I want to do everything. And I think that's quite priceless.
One of the things that you mentioned there, I want to make sure people didn't miss it was I wrote it down here. Leadership is in the nanoseconds. And that's really powerful because what you were talking about to be able to, the way that I like to think about it is respond versus react. And as you practice these skills of stepping back, reflecting, thinking through what will happen if I do this, what will be the impacts of that? Is that good, bad, ugly, whatever it may be? As you start to practice this, those are the types of things that are going to happen almost instantaneously, right? When you see something, whether it's an email comes in, a phone call that comes in, and your knee-jerk reaction is to fire right back, but then you find yourself, wait a minute, hold on, before I do that, and
Yeah.
then you're going into that process. To me, that's what separates either a good leader and a bad leader, a great leader and a bad leader, or a leader versus a manager, is those nanoseconds where you pause and then you race through 1,000 different things, 1,000 different scenarios, and respond versus react. That's very powerful.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the beautiful thing is we don't need to get this perfect because none of us will. There are times where, but the beautiful thing about human beings is when I handle something poorly, I know immediately. I mean, it's not a surprise, it's like, oh man, I know I should have taken more time. And then, we just do the cleanup work. We apologize to people when we need to. I'm so sorry. I was
Mm-hmm.
running out the door. I sent that. Here's what I really intended. And human beings are remarkably forgiving. So we don't need to
Mm-hmm.
get it perfect, but I think we can speed up the time that we recognize what's happening within me and how do I want to handle it out there. And we get faster and faster at doing that. And then it just becomes the way that we interact in the world. And it's so much easier then.
Definitely. I know I've saved myself some heartache and some problems by just pausing. I'm like, do I want to send this? No, let me rethink. Let me come back to it. Let me rethink this response.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That is incredible self-mastery to just pause. Just
Yes.
that, just a second to just go, let me just hold it for a second. Yeah.
And I've heard countless examples of this throughout history, whether it was with Abraham Lincoln, would put his letters, his correspondence out to generals in a desk drawer, let it sit for 24 hours, take it back out, review it. I remember hearing stuff recently around Mark Twain. I think his wife would take some of his letters, and some of them she just wouldn't send. Like, nope, we're not going to send this one. But this idea of having that buffer, whether it is just taking a second, taking a day, or maybe having somebody else look at it. Say, what do you think about this response? Having a trusted advisor, especially as a high level leader, is very important.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Susanne, as you think about your career and your life, who has been somebody that's had an influence on your communication style? Maybe you've picked up something from them, tweaked a little bit, made it your own, but who's somebody who's had an influence on the way you communicate?
Yeah, I'll pick my sister Sharon. And I actually wrote about her in the book as the person I admired the most. My sister, growing up, when she was in grade 12, I was in grade 9, she would find me at lunch and made sure that I had lunch. And if I didn't, she would give me hers. She would invite me to hang out with her friends who were all grade 12s, and so I was instantly cool. They would do roll call and they'd say, Susie Biro, are you Sharon Biro's sister? And I would say, yes, I am. And they'd say, we love Sharon. I'd say, I know you do. Like I had an opportunity. One of my first careers was to work in my mother's barbershop for 13 years to put myself through school. So I worked with my mother, my grandfather, and my sister Sharon. And Sharon was booked up almost a year in advance. Everyone that has ever met her will say she's just the kindest person in the world because she is so present and thoughtful. and she actually pays attention to all the many details of who you are. She now is a home stager and designer. And again, I mean, she doesn't even have time to create a website. She is so busy just by word of mouth. And I think it's because she genuinely cares about other people. She pays attention to their lives and to what matters to them. And then she makes whatever time people have, whether it was to do their hair in a previous career, or now, to take them through home renovations and design, rooms that they love within their budgets and within their means. She makes that process fun and enjoyable, because what we're looking for is to enjoy our lives, not just an outcome, and to be that kind of a person. And so I've just learned so much from her, as far as, if all we did, I mean, your listeners, is all you do is seek to root and work for the success of others genuinely. Like, want them to win as much as you want to win. If all you do is you have that orientation playing out everything under everything you do, you'll be just fine. Communication will flow naturally. You will be naturally present because you'll actually be interested in them. So it would be my sister Sharon. Just her presence, her attention to detail, her desire to serve. It's the best I've seen.
Very nice. Siblings have been getting their flowers recently. Last episode, the guest talked about their brother-in-law. Now this episode with your sister. Love to hear that. And wow, booked a year out. I'm kind of sometimes upset when I have to wait 3 to 4 weeks to get in to see my barber. So wow, that is glad to hear that. But I think you nailed it, right? When you focus on others, right? Trying to either root for others or focus on other people's success and the outcomes that they're looking for, whether it's for your clients or as a leader. I always talk about, when you're a leader, it's no longer about you, it's about your people. Your job is to help them to be successful. And it's different for every single person on your team. And it's your job to understand, what does that look like for you? What does that look like for you over here? And really work to help meet them where they are and get them to where they want to go. Susanne, as we are wrapping up here, what piece of closing advice would you have for folks listening to this today, just in general, around communication skills, their importance, and the impact that they can have on their lives? Susanne, as we wrap up here, what piece of closing advice would you have for folks listening to this, just really in general, around the importance of the skills that we talked about today and the impact that they can have on their lives?
I think the greatest investment you can ever make, any of us can ever make, is in understanding ourselves and learning how to show up in the world in the way that we most want and intend to. So study yourself, learn as much as you can, invest in yourself. When things go really well, a conversation, a meeting, a presentation, whatever it is, debrief why. What were you thinking? What were you feeling? What were you focused on? When things don't go so well, or feel awkward, or it wasn't successful, or you didn't land the deal, why? What were you thinking? What were you feeling? What were you focused on? And the more you know about yourself, and the more you can be really intentional in who you want to be in the world. Like, what kind of human being do you want to be? What kind of professional do you want to be? And keep working towards that. I think that's the best advice that I can give. It's certainly what I'm trying to do myself. It is what I feel like every client I work with is doing. And I get to have the honor of working with some of the most talented, successful men and women on the planet. And these are the people investing in coaching. They're probably the people that need it the least. And yet, success always leaves clues. It's always the best and brightest that continue to go, who can I learn from? What can I learn from that person? And so find people that you admire in any fashion. Like, if you admire someone's understanding of money and wealth creation, then take money advice from them. If you find someone who's fit and lean and healthy the way you wish to be, ask them for advice, or follow what they do. Because success leaves clues. And so we can look for, sort of our coaches anywhere. And we don't even have to know them personally to be able to gain incredible value from them. So, the biggest investment, invest in you.
Success leaves clues, study others, and study yourself. That is fantastic advice. Susanne, if people want to connect with you, learn more about the work that you do, and to order your book, what are the best ways for them to do that? And I can include those in the show notes.
Sure. Best way to find me is SuzanneBiro.com. You'll find, on my website, a blog of my recent writing, a link to the book, my podcast, my app, everything's there. Or just simply follow me on social media as well through the links there.
Fantastic. I will be sure to include those in the show notes. Susanne, thank you so much. Thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Scott, thank you. I really enjoyed it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Special thanks again to my guest, Susanne Biro, for joining us and for her thoughtful insights into communication, leadership, and personal growth. As we close, here's a reminder. Communication isn't just about what you say. It's about how you show up. Take the time to understand yourself, build practices that keep you grounded, and respond with presence and intention. That's how real leadership is felt and remembered. Subscribe to Communicast so you don't miss future episodes with leaders pushing the boundaries of what great communication looks like. And if this episode struck a chord, please leave a rating or review. It helps others find us and support our growing community of learners. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.